When the days are cold and the cards all fold and the saints we see are all made of gold, when your dreams all fail and the ones we hail are the worst of all and the blood runs stale, I wanna hide the truth, I wanna shelter you, but with the beast inside, there's nowhere we can hide. No matter what we breed, we still are made of greed.
Hello and welcome to the Heroic Review. This is our weekly episode review, and this is our review of Season 5's episode number 13, To Princess's Dream of Magic Sheep. In this week's episode, Luna is shown to have created a monster that she cannot control. Joining me this week is myself, Deadlyreg, for a start, because I'm not in these very often. Our regular contributor, Goombasa.
Hello, everybody.
Greg.
Hello, folks.
Gray.
How y'all doing?
Illya.
How is everyone tonight?
The lovely Scribbler.
Hello.
And the lovely Webshoter.
Hello, everyone. Hey, was that a flying muffin?
Hey, and yes, this was an episode about dreams and wonderment. General opinions of the episode, starting with Goombasa.
I really enjoyed this episode. I view it as basically the only the second Luna episode that we have ever had on this show, and it didn't disappoint. I think that her characterization was great. I love the main six, and I love the way that they used the dreams in this episode.
Greg?
Going to once again say they could have done a lot more with the inside a dream format, but I overall really liked the episode and was overall very pleased with it. And I used overall too many times. Overall.
Gray?
I liked a lot of this episode. I liked the kind of moral they had behind it. There are bits and pieces that I didn't like, but it was a pretty good episode overall.
Illya?
Well, I loved it, of course, but then I'm in love with Luna. And the only disappointment I had was the way the Tantibus was drawn, but that's pretty minor.
Scribbler?
I liked it for the most part. I think the ending was a little bit rushed and nobody really addressed the fact that Luna was self-harming.
Webshoter?
I really enjoyed the episode. I mean, there's not a whole lot to dislike on it. I mean, nitpicks here and there in my book, but all in all, it was still a great episode.
Tantibus was the enemy in this week's episode, and Tantibus is a corruption of the Latin tantibus, which means nightmare, and also, I believe, a reference to Tantalus, who was forever tormented by having success just outside of his reach. Who had thirst but could never quite drink enough water because the waters receded away from him. And in a similar way, Luna did that, but to herself, so that she could never ever be happy ever for even a moment, or else she might turn evil.
Luna, Ruby, Luna.
What we learned is Luna has no confidence in her ability to remain good, and so she created evil. So, I think this episode was pretty good. I think it was certainly the second best Luna episode we've ever had, because this was the episode where Luna showed up and was being kind of a dick to herself. And in the previous episode, she just showed up and had a royal voice and yelled, and that was season 2. So that was 3 years ago. So all in all, yeah, we actually haven't had a Luna episode since season 2. All she's done is not show up for things. So it was nice to actually get a bit of depth to a character. Scott Sonnenberg writing here, which is weird because I didn't actually know that he wrote the introductory 2 episodes, but apparently he's credited as doing so. Scribbler?
Well, go back to what you said about we haven't, she just didn't show up for things. She was in the CMC episodes, and you can kind of infer some characterization from that.
You can somewhat, I mean, she has a personality. She certainly has a personality in those episodes, but it's more of a, I wouldn't say it's consistent. She seems almost playful she seems sort of sage in the Scootaloo episode, but then she kind of isn't the same in the Sweetie Belle episode. Kind of all over the place a bit.
Mentioning the CMC episodes, you can kind of look at those as that's her air quote job, is to watch over the dreams of all the ponies and the night and everything like that. So she's approaching that individually, specified to each pony. But for this episode, you said she was kind of self-harming. Well, when you've been gone for 1,000 years after making a mistake and thinking about it for 1,000 years, and you come back and there's holidays devoted to essentially, how evil you were, you can kind of see where she would become a recluse and kind of hate herself for that. And
she didn't spend 1,000 years musing over a mistake. She spent 1,000 years being evil. She was evil on the moon. She wasn't Luna trapped on the moon thinking, oh, I wish I was a Nightmare Moon. She was like, oh, I wish my sister hadn't stuck me on the moon. I could be wrecking shit up right now. She got back home and they fixed it, and she was like, well, I better torment myself every living night for the remainder of my immortal existence, lest I decide to become evil again. Great.
I was just going to say, Luna could have been conscious that time. We don't know. I'm going to leave that one there.
We know she was, because as soon as she came back, she was evil. That's my word on it, and I'm the moderator.
Why? Of course she was conscious. She was Nightmare Moon. She was the evil psychopath who wanted to plunge the world into eternal night for about 1,000 years stuck up on the moon. We got a lot of fan theories, but we haven't had any direct confirmation, of what happened to her up there. We have to assume she was just Nightmare Moon being evil, plotting her return.
We do have a paucity of information on Luna, and we can't really say one way or another from this what she was up to on the moon, but she was probably being evil.
Well, we can assume that, and I would say she at least thinks that because she has spent the time since her return, every night trying to punish herself for what she did. What she did, not what someone else made her do, not what some external force made her do, what she did. So she created herself a nightmare to remind her of the nightmare that she used to be.
Well, to be fair, she did transform into an entirely separate entity.
But was it an entirely separate entity?
Well, it was a physical change, but was it a mental change as well? Her mental state may have been out of question, but I would think it was still her, mind, just unstable and evil. I won't say something else might not have been influencing her, but it was her, as far as we've been told.
Webshoter, then Scribbler.
As far as we know, back in the past, basically she felt like she's being neglected, ignored by all the subjects and everyone who she works hard to bring the night for. If anything, anger, jealousy, and all that negative emotions is what probably caused her to turn into Nightmare Moon in the first place. And because of that, everything got out of hand. And so Luna feels very terrible about it, especially what almost happened.
It does depend on how much you think the comics and the show canon should and could be linked, because the comics went into this in quite a lot of detail in the Nightmare Rarity arc, about they did consider it to be an exterior force, if not exacerbating. Well, problem is that they have said that there are links between canon, between show and comic, and they've not really had anything to contradict that yet. That yes, the basis of Nightmare Moon was Luna's own emotions, but the actual transformation was influenced by another external force. And if you look back at the animation from Princess Twilight Sparkle, when she is transforming into Nightmare Moon, she does look shocked and something else envelops her and turns her into Nightmare Moon. It does look like the transformation was somewhat forced upon her. And then this episode says something different. So there's contradictions along the way. And the explanations of it do depend on how much validation you put into the comics.
Well, regardless of whether it was or wasn't an external force influencing her, controlling her, to what extent she was in control, she clearly believes that it was her, that she was Nightmare Moon, We don't necessarily have a contradiction in the continuity as much as we might be seeing it from a different perspective.
Well, if I got upset and turned into a sharp-toothed evil horse and then got exiled to the moon for 1,000 years, only to return and be cured by the magical powers of 6 magical horses, I might feel pretty torn up about it as well, even if it was entirely me.
Now, would you feel torn, or would you feel like you were on an LSD trip?
I'd feel like, man, I really wish I hadn't turned into an evil sharp-toothed horse monster. But Luna, she's a magical horse. She has duties that she abandoned because she was too busy wanting everyone to really enjoy the dark, where they can't see her beautiful night.
Well, the thing about it is, it doesn't matter what Nightmare Moon did. It doesn't matter who she was when she was on the moon. The important point I think they're trying to make is that she was turned into this monster, or this monster was allowed to take over her because of her initial feelings of jealousy. And that's probably the thing that she would be punishing herself for, not being Nightmare Moon, not doing the things that Nightmare Moon did, but having the feelings that led to the transformation.
I think that's a very valid point, and it does answer a lot of our questions here. Is she more punishes herself for the lapse that led to her transforming rather than the actions that she took? So, thank you, Illya. You've really put a button on that one. That's that one sorted out. Problem solved. Okay, so this episode had a big dream sequence. It was all a bit weird. Was there any highlights for anybody? Goombasa.
Well, for some of the main six's dream sequences, I was really hoping that their dreams would sort of give us a bit more insight into their personalities, and it kind of did with some of them, but others didn't really do much for their characters, which was kind of disappointing for me. Oh, Rarity is dreaming about flying dresses, Twilight's dreaming about books. Fluttershy's was very interesting considering that she dreams about being a pet, and Rainbow Dash's, where she's constantly in danger and her nightmare is having it turn all cute on her, I thought was very interesting. But there wasn't really a whole lot in their dreams that sort of gave us much insight into them, which was disappointing.
As I said during the introductions, the dream sequences sort of disappointed me at places. And the biggest thing about that was, other than Rainbow Dash, where her dream is fighting changelings and being this action hero, constantly taking risks and all, and her nightmare is everything becoming safe and friendly and cutesy. That was the only one that I thought was really unique. Everything else, Tantabus is just turning dresses and books and whatever and giant angel bunny into monsters. That is like the most boring way to make something into a nightmare. I'm just slightly disappointed in the execution. Good concept, but lackluster.
Gray?
I kind of agree on that, but there are certain dreams that I can see as to why it would be detrimental and, kind of tearing into them, but there are others that I just can't defend at all. Rarity's dream, you could say that she was dreaming and having inspiration for new dress designs, and then the Tantipus tore apart her inspiration. Twilight, books, I can't defend that one. Fluttershy, I found her initial dream rather disturbing in and of itself, so I think that was the nightmare, just that segment. Rainbow Dashes, I think, was just written badly. Applejack was just bats all over again.
It was actually just bats.
And Pinkie Pie proves that she has interdimensional portals.
Pinkie Pie proves that she has ADHD.
She's just easily distracted.
Among other things.
I'd actually forgotten about Pinkie Pie's dream sequence until you just mentioned it. The Fluttershy one, I didn't see it actually as her just wanting to be a pet. I think with the semi-complicated relationship she has with Angel, I think that was more a reflection that she just wants to be appreciated. She wants Angel, more than anyone else, to appreciate all that she does for him and to pay it back a little bit. And if your dreams are where you process the daylight happenings, that would seem to fit. Also, Rainbow Dashes, it was the first return of changelings properly, apart from one randomly at the back of a wedding.
They're getting kicked in the face, which is their job.
My point with this was actually that, yeah, you can complain that the dream sequences didn't show us anything new about these characters, but my argument would be that would be too distracting from what the actual point was. We weren't meant to be learning more about them. We've had 101 other episodes about that, but we were supposed to be following Luna, and it would have taken away from that if we'd suddenly been having incisive, revealing dream sequences about the main six, because they weren't the focus. They were main characters in this, but they weren't the thrust of the episode. We were meant to be watching Luna.
So Big Mac turned into a princess. That was pretty good.
Princess Big Man.
Which was weird.
Princess of Yep.
Because it did look a lot like that old comic, Pixel Kitties.
Yeah, Pixel Kitties. But and somebody else pointed this out to me. The music that plays when Mac is transforming is actually a reworked version of the Sailor Moon transformation sequence theme.
That's an excellent point, and that's beautiful. And I'm so glad that they did that.
In the name of the Mac, he will punish you.
I would watch that show.
Except then he just hits everybody with an Apple computer.
I enjoyed that 2 of the characters turned into the magical superhero horses that we've seen
Our
before.
opponent has made a return.
Which showed
And Flutterbat.
which goes well. I say Flutterbat because they probably just reused the model, but I like that 2 of the characters thought, "Man, being a superhero was one of the high points of my life. I'm going to use that as a inspiration."
And Filthy Rich and his magical money beams.
He was basically the Iceman, but with money.
Before Big Mac became a princess, he was also dreaming that he was a unicorn, which I thought was very interesting. The fact that somebody as big and strong and quiet as him apparently dreams about having magical abilities.
Was to fire smiling apples.
But that's not the Earth Pony way.
No, you got to do it the hard way.
But Big Macintosh has always seemed smart enough to understand, sometimes pragmatism is the best approach. And magic would be undoubtedly useful in managing all the tasks involved in running a farm.
Especially if they also keep pigs.
Goombasa, did you have a point that you wanted to continue with? Because you said you had lots to say on the dreams.
No, you guys basically went off and just mentioned everything I was going to mention except for Lyrabon. You failed to mention that this episode made Lyrabon canon.
Oh, that horrifying thing! I hated that.
Oh, how dare we? How dare we fail to mention Lyrabon?
It was CatDog. I hated that. That was the stuff of nightmares.
I love you so much, I want you to be my bum.
Basically, yes. And then they look really happy about it and they hug and no, this is a horrifying thing. You now have no anus between you.
Look, you don't have to poop in a dream. That's the benefit of a dream. You don't have to poop in them. And
No, that's a
nightmare.
nightmare. 2 stomachs, no bumhole.
Gray, did you have something to add that isn't about the horrifying image of someone pooping out their mouth?
I can see, like y'all said, why he would want the magic for the farm work, because he's for the work smart, not hard method.
He's the Scrooge McDuck, because that was Scrooge McDuck's motto. Work smarter, not harder.
Webshoter?
So, of all the dreams, we get to see Night Spike again later on when he goes, "Hey, if we're going to dream, might as well dream big."
Sir Spike the Gallant, saving Lady Rarity from the Tantibus.
While riding a giant derpy.
Who meows? Why was Derpy meowing in her dream?
Derpy has animal sounds all except for when she rears up and you normally hear the horse whinnying. In that case, she just went, yay.
She did. She actually had some voice work by Tabitha there. So that was a thing they did.
I cannot help but think, and this is in regards to the nature of the Tantibus and its origins. Tantibus being a corruption of the Latin word for nightmare. The fact that it takes, as it's about to gain enough power to escape the dream world, the form of a giant alicorn made of purple starry haze.
I have to puncture your theory a moment. It's not an alicorn, it's the form of a unicorn.
I remain convinced that there is a possibility that in her final moments as Nightmare Moon, Luna or whatever force was influencing, controlling, etc., I'm not getting back into that, could have planted the thought of creating the Tantibus as a final gambit in the event that they lost and were turned back to good, thus making sure that eventually, from her guilt over what she did, it would gain enough power to escape into the real world and turn the world into a nightmare.
I just want to say that there might be something revealing then in the fact that the purple unicorn did or did not have wings, because Twilight did or did not have wings at some point, and Twilight was both Luna's savior and destroyer as Nightmare Moon. So there's a little deep for it, maybe, but it's a thought.
Well, there's been no shortage of depth in this show before. It's subtle, but it's there.
You just have to look for hidden starlight glimmers to know that.
At the end of the episode, we see Luna dreaming of Luna dreaming or sleeping, one or the other.
Well, if you're the princess of the night and you're the princess of sleep, what is the one thing that you never get to do?
Oh, yeah.
Sleep. But if you think of that and you go back to your initial theory of that was Nightmare Moon's last hurrah, basically, you can basically see that they've just now put Inception in ponies. Down to the third level, that idea was planted and brought itself up into the form of Tantabus later on that we see now.
Blam! It's not properly Inception until they've made the noise.
Yes, someone insert that vwom noise in here, because if any episode needs the vwom, it's this one.
How about we do it together now? We'll record ours. 3, 2, 1. We haven't actually talked about the self-harm aspect, even though I ranted a bit about it at the start.
We did. We said the self-harm was probably a gambit by Nightmare Moon to restore herself.
No, let's have a think about this. Luna is it throws every other appearance by Luna in this show since the first episode has now been thrown into a different light, because we know that whatever she did, she went home that night and mentally scarred and self-harmed herself. So any wisdom and things that she was giving people, it's a little bit odd. She's giving people guidance on how to live a good life while self-flagellating. Whatever.
Well, you see, during the day, when she's seeing all these, she's in her capacity as a princess, and she has to maintain that royal air. But at night, when she's sleeping and dreaming, that's when she's, her actual unhidden self. And that's when we see just how much pain she's in over what she can perceives as her own failings and her own evils.
The thing about her sleeping, though, is that she doesn't appear to sleep that often to begin with. We saw that she has to be conscious in order to link into other people's dreams.
She got the whole day.
The way I look at that is that Luna basically turned into a workaholic. She works as much as she can to avoid what she can, and then she will crash. And at that point, she gives herself the nightmare, so she can then wake up and not want to go to sleep again and work until she crashes again.
I don't think they have put as much thought into this as we are putting into this.
Isn't that the way it usually goes with analysis?
It usually is. I would say that the magical horses probably don't need to sleep unless they do. And then when they do, Luna goes home and basically burns herself with the kettle.
The only thing I was going to say is what bothers me, as it does so often in this show, is where is Celestia in Luna's hour of need? Why doesn't she see this? Isn't there some magical serotonin reuptake inhibitor that she could use?
That's true. Maybe while she has no power during the night, she could gently encourage her sister to go to some sort of mental health crisis team and gently guide her through.
Well, only if Celestia is aware. I mean, we've seen no indication that Luna is this troubled during her other appearances. She must be extremely good at hiding it, as a lot of people who suffer these kind of problems are.
Well, throughout the entirety of the episode, we don't even know that she created it until she tells us outright. I mean, you can kind of piece it together, but she hides it from the main six. She doesn't let them help her. She very much wants to keep it to only her until she has to let others help.
She has the quickest turnabout we've ever fucking seen in terms of mental health problems. Because they're like, you should probably forgive yourself. And she's like, yeah, all right. And that cures her.
I choose to think that after the end of the episode, this was just the start of something. She got the first good night's sleep she's had in a long while, but she's not completely healed. Otherwise, that's a fucking travesty.
On the turnaround time, I do want to point out that is indeed a problem that this show has quite often. They'll portray a problem that in the real world would take months, perhaps even years to heal, and they wrap it up in about 2 minutes of screen time. That's a consistent problem since the beginning of the show.
Well, one could consider it a problem with the format. I mean,
Well, you've got 22 minutes to solve this friendship problem. You got 22 minutes to solve the friendship problem.
Yeah, and in that way, I don't think that it's something that's worth really criticizing that much because of the format and because of the fact that I guess calling it a problem is not a good way to say it, but it is something that has been with the show since the very beginning.
So they set up very, very complex storylines. They make themselves complex, nuanced, deep, and then can't follow it through because they don't have the time. They're basically too clever for their own good.
well, it is about the journey, not the destination.
At least it doesn't have the problems that Games Ponies Play had, where the ending made no sense. And I think we can call the end of the review there. This was the Heroic Review, looking at The Princess's Dream of Magic Sheep, and joining your guest moderator this week, Deadlyreg, was Goombasa.
Goodbye, everybody.
Greg?
Long days and pleasant nights, and sorry I hit the wrong button.
Gray?
Adios, amigos.
Illya?
Be wonderful, ponies.
Scribbler?
Be lovely to each other, and stop nicking my bit, Illya.
And Webshoter.
Goodbye, everyone. See you in the future.
I was once again your moderator, Deadlyreg, and thank you for listening. Bye!
So you're a moderator now. You're a moderator.
A moderator. It's a step up from a moderator.
Of greed. This is my kingdom come. This is my kingdom come. When you feel my heat, look into my eyes. It's where my demons hide. It's where my demons hide. Don't get too close. It's dark inside. It's where my demons hide. It's where my at the curtain call. It's the last of all. When the lights fade out, all the sinners crawl. So they dug